whenever I first stepped into leadership, I thought, well, I've got to have all the answers. Leadership, you've got to know, you've got to know what's going on. And so that's not the case at all. It's being able to surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you, allowing them to stay in their lane and having the shared common goals. And then when you're all marching to the same tune, man, you're able to get so much done at the end of the day.
That is Ashley Miller. I'm Todd Faulkner, and this is Leadership Magnified. Welcome. Ashley Miller is the Executive Director of Lifeline Recovery Center, a residential and non-residential recovery program in Paducah-McCracken County. You'll hear her describe how Lifeline changes lives for the better, gives people the tools they need to thrive. You'll also hear how the program works, her leadership style, and her advice for younger leaders. Here's my conversation. Enjoy. Ashley Miller, welcome to Leadership Magnified. Glad you're here.
Yes, glad to be here. Before we kick off, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I've watched quite a few of these and you've done great. And so, yeah, looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. I think we're going to have a good conversation. So before we dive into Lifeline and leadership, let's hear a little bit about you. Where are you from? Your story?
Yeah,
Take it away.
absolutely. So I've called Paducah home for about 14 years now, and I'm married to Eric Miller, and we're going on 24 years of marriage, believe it or not. Yes. And so he owns a steadfast remodeling and roofing here in this area. So for any of your remodeling needs, give him a call.
Will do.
Yes, absolutely. And then I've got a 23-year-old daughter, and she's enrolled in Murray State, and she's on track to become a CPA. And just the relationship that we have today, it's precious. Like I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. And then professionally, I'm the executive director of Lifeline Recovery Center, and I've been involved with that organization for about 14 years now as well. I love to learn, and I'm a constant learner. I've got multiple mentors in my life. I've got an executive coach. And so just really trying to become everything that God has created me to be.
I like it. So let's talk about Lifeline Recovery Center. We were just talking before we started recording that I think in this community, people at least know the name, if not they're involved, or maybe they've gone there, or they have a family member, or what have you. What services does Lifeline provide? What is it?
Absolutely. So, Lifeline Recovery Center is a long term, faith based organization that serves men and women. We've got three different campuses, and we serve approximately 200 people each year. And so, right now, our program is 9 to 12 months, and people can stay even post graduation. So, we have some people that will stay with us up to 2 years. And so, our program is split up into three different phases. And so, the first phase of the program is really about 4 to 5 months, depending on that individual and their progress. And so they go through different classes throughout that first phase. We keep them very busy. It's about 16 different classes a week.
Wow.
And so they go through everything from anger management to parenting. We offer family counseling, individual therapy, group therapy. We partner with a local college, and we have now a resilience class that is curriculum that's approved through the state. And they're going to touch on HR skills, communication skills, soft skills, things like that. They're going to learn how to write their resume, practice real life interviews. And so, some of the fundamental basic skills that you need to be successful in life. That first phase is really about renewing that mindset. They're going to have classes on triggers and boundaries and things of that nature. And so we really keep them together in a group in that first phase. We go to church 3 times a week, and then we've got NAAA meetings, Celebrate Recovery. They're required to get a sponsor, and so just continuing that education portion in that first phase. And so then in second phase, whenever they're able to go into that phase, that is where they're able to get a job throughout the day. And so we've got about 40 different employers that partner with us that hire our clients on a rotating basis because they know they're going to be there on time, drug free, and we transport them wherever they need to go. And so, that's a huge barrier for individuals in recovery is transportation. So we make sure that's not a challenge for the individuals that we serve. So they're going to work throughout the day, and then they come back at night and they have classes at night. So they're going to take a money management course. And so not only are they earning money, but we're going to teach them how to properly budget. We're going to look at, do you have fines, child support, etc. What is it that that individual needs to be successful at the end of the day?
Mhm.
And we're teaching them those things, throughout the program. So as they're working and they're coming back at night, then in the second phase, they can get passes on the weekend so they can go home and visit their family. So they got one foot out in the world, one foot in treatment. So it's a slow transition back into society. And then they go into what we call aftercare, which is the third and final phase.
Okay.
And that is where individuals, they're living more independently. Um, they have to keep a job, be budgeting, and then drug testing throughout the entire program. And then they pay a liability in that phase as well. But it's again, they can stay in that transition portion, that last and final phase. They can stay into our transitional house as long as they want. So even post graduation, because you got to think, if they are going back home, majority of them are going back to the same type of environment that they came from.
Mhm.
And then also the individuals that we serve, a lot of them come from incarceration. They've burnt every bridge. They don't have resources. They don't have the family support that you see in some other areas.
So it's going to take time to
It
find a
takes
place,
time.
and yeah,
Yes. And so that's one thing that sets us apart is the long term and being faith based. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
very layered. Sounds very impressive. What do you think people get wrong in terms of assumptions about
Yeah.
an addict?
So I think the biggest communication there would just be that individual, like it's a choice, that individuals just wake up and choose to, be an addict, or people think, well, you're just not being strong enough. And when you really set with that, how many people do you know at the end of the day would just wake up when you can be anything that you want to be at the end of the day? Just wake up one day and say, I want to lose everything.
Mhm.
I want to lose custody of my children. I want to, break all of the bonds and break all of my parents' heart, my grandparents' heart. I wanna be in and out of treatment. I wanna be in and out of jail. There's not too many people that's just gonna sign up for that at the end of the day. And so really understanding it's more than a choice. And, because I can promise you the individuals that we serve and the staff that I have today, they're some of the most resilient people I know. They're not bad people. They've just made some wrong decisions. And I think that's all of us, at the end of the day. I'm a graduate myself. My husband's a graduate. And so, again, just understanding, having a little bit more compassion, and then also educating yourself rather than just, making judgments.
Mhm. I think personally, one thing I've read this, but I've also experienced this. Addiction, it doesn't matter how big your bank account is or how little your bank account
It
is.
does not
I mean,
discriminate.
I personally have a family relative, he's in his 60s now, he's got his life together, but he went from owning his own law firm,
Yeah.
money was nothing,
Yes.
and he lost it all
That's it.
because
And
of an addiction.
yeah, and he's probably he's a good
Yeah, he
but it
is.
just couldn't let it go, and
Yeah.
so again, just understanding it does not discriminate, and people need support rather than judgment, but just finding the right support, and that's one thing at Lifeline, like, I try to surround them with as many resources as I can so they can pick and choose at the end of the day what works best for them because we're
Mhm,
not all wired the same, and so again, just again, it's more understanding and trying to educate yourself
mhm.
rather than just looking at that individual like, oh, they if they wanted to quit, they could,
Right,
you know?
yeah. Okay, so you serve as executive director. What are your well, you actually kind of talked about your responsibility. Well, what are your responsibilities as executive director? You probably
Yeah.
got a lot that you do.
Sure. So my role as the executive director really touches on every part of the organization.
Mhm.
I oversee clinical compliance, state regulations, the inspections, the billing, fundraising, HR, strategic planning. We've got the new campus development
Mhm.
going on as well. And so, that's across three campuses. We also have a team of 55 members, our staff members. And so then we also have about 75 volunteers. And so, yeah, you know.
Wow, it's a lot. Okay, so how would you describe your personal leadership style?
So I would say I am a servant leader. I really want to help you become your best self at the end of the day. I also am big on leading by example and keeping your word, to individuals. I really try to understand, especially with the leadership team that I have. I'm big on doing PI, like performance indicators, and being able to just really understand like how they're wired at the end of the day and what really their strengths and weaknesses are. And so I can help, that helps me communicate with them better. But really being able to learn your people and learn how they're wired, that's my leadership style. I really like to know how I can show up in my best self. That way I can help support them be, the best that they can be.
Yeah, build those relationships with your
Absolutely.
coworkers.
Yeah.
What are some lessons in leadership and interacting with some of these employees, these staff members that you've learned over time?
So definitely, whenever I first stepped into leadership, I thought, well, I've got to have all the answers. Leadership, you've got to know, you've got to know what's going on. And so that's not the case at all. It's being able to surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you, allowing them to stay in their lane and having the shared common goals. And then when you're all marching to the same tune, man, you're able to get so much done at the end of the day, and the unity that you're able to build. And so, definitely I would say, those are some of the things that, I myself have enjoyed
Yeah.
being able to do.
What are some red flags or mistakes you think younger leaders make?
So,
Not, and again, good
yeah,
people, right? They
absolutely.
want to do good, but
Yes.
what are some? Ooh, I don't know if I do that.
Yeah. I think we all know them, but the know-it-alls, the ones that are not teachable and they're not open-minded. They want the title, but they don't want the accountability that goes with it. And so, being young, sometimes we chase, going up the ladder rather than we do, investing in ourselves and really investing in the people around us. And so to me, it's more relationship style, rather than coming in and just changing a bunch of things, get to know the people, allow them to trust you, and then you trust them. And so it's a back and forth at the end of the day. But, just don't come in immediately and start changing things. I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of leaders go wrong.
And I've mentioned this on the podcast before with other guests. There was a time where I thought had to have all the answers,
Yes.
and then when you make that switch, I tell some of our younger
Hmm.
reporters in editorial meetings, I'm always going, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Or explain that again.
Yep.
Like, it's okay that I don't get it or
That's
I
right.
don't have the answer.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay. Kind of in the same vein, what is your advice to people who are eager to one day become leaders?
Yes, just, definitely invest in yourself and know that it's not just always a straight line.
Mhm.
To me, growth looks nothing, it's curvy and you think you're going, two steps forward and sometimes you'll take three steps back, but just being patient with yourself, being patient with others, but just don't stop. The consistency I feel like is a big part of it. Sometimes we get discouraged and then we quit, but have that level of grit, that you're just not going to stop, at the end of the day. And so those are all things that have helped me.
I like that. Um, Oh, we've come to the end. So this is the fun part for me. We kind of draw the curtain back on personality a little bit.
Yeah.
You can answer one word or long questions. Three questions. What brings you joy?
So, what brings me joy is being around my daughter and my husband, just pretty much doing anything with them. Again, I touched on earlier that relationship that we have today is, it's just something that I try not to take for granted. And then definitely being able to travel. We love to travel. Exercise is a big, part of what makes, what brings me joy at the end of the day. And then running. I picked up running lately. And so, I have been able to develop a level of grit that I did not know I had in myself, and you can't get that on the couch, so
Right.
I love running. I'm actually preparing for a half marathon right now, that Bluegrass Classic. That's going
Yes,
to
I'm
be
familiar with. Yep.
October
Yep.
17th. And so, yeah, just those things, I have been able to really find joy out of. And so, yeah.
What brings a tear to your eye?
So, good question. And so a lot of people don't know this about me, but in worship at church, sometimes you'll see a tear coming out of my eye just when I'm reflecting on the goodness of God and what He's done in my life,
Mhm.
where I was compared to where I am today, and where my family is, being able to see them in church and worshiping and things like that. We're so undeserving, but He's so merciful, and so when I reflect back in those moments, yeah, it gets me teared up.
So good. And last question: what gives you hope?
Lifeline, and just everything that it represents. There's so many people struggling at the end of the day
Mhm.
and that don't have hope. And I feel like that's what our world needs. And so, another reason that we've been so successful in our campaign is just they see how, this community needs hope, but then they also see what Lifeline represents, and that is hope. It's giving people, a chance, a second chance, a third chance that we all need. The graduates, they give me hope. The clients that are in there fighting every single day to become better, they give me hope. And being able to see them graduate and then the restoration played out in their family, and then becoming everything God created them to be, that's what gives me hope at the end of the day. And I feel like we all need that, and then the legacy that it's going to leave behind, after, I'm gone and this is said and done and the campaign, it's now over. But those buildings, they represent so much more than just buildings. How many lives are going to be changed? And so at the end of the day, that mission, it gives me so much hope.
Good conversation. Thanks for being
Yes,
here, Ashley.
absolutely. Thank you.
That's this week's show. If you like what you heard, post a link to the podcast on your social media pages. Video and sound by Mason Watkins. Editing by Brian Clapp. Until next week, stay safe, friends.